This is The Nerdy Truth, and I'm your host, Dr. JJ Walcott. Our focus is on finding innovative solutions to build for the future. And today will be no different. We are so excited to have with us Mike Hruska, who will be talking about transforming the workplace, something that is now near and dear to everyone's heart as we enter the new normal, as they say, dealing with all of the work from home choices that we have and the options to do blended work, as well as the virtual learning that we see for all of our students and for our teachers. So without further ado, let's bring in our guest. Hello.
Good day. How are you?
I am so well. How are you doing?
I'm doing something very sinful. I'm eating a Five Guys burger.
Oh, that is delicious.
It is so good. I mean, I like do all this clean eating stuff, and then I have my breaks on the weekends. But oh my goodness, I was like,
for Wednesday.
Actually, I'm sitting in my office right now, which is so weird. Let me make sure there's nothing proprietary. Nope, nothing. And I was having spotty internet at my house, so I grabbed one of my doggies, and he's sitting under the conference room table here with me, hanging out. And I was like, I didn't want to have bad internet connection and screw anything up with you, so I just figured I'd come here.
Well, goodness knows this is the reality that we're all facing, isn't it? Yesterday, I was speaking to folks from around the world, and my router, my phone connection, because I offloaded my auditory and my camera all clicked off at the moment that I clicked on to start speaking. So, and ironically, what was I discussing? Cognitive load theory and the impact on being able to do these things under high stress situations. I laughed. If someone had had an EEG on me, I would have been spiking because I was trying to reboot, reconnect, move to a secondary camera while also keeping a dialogue going for a 5-minute Ignite speech, which has, of course, auto-advancing PowerPoint. So these are the realities, and this is actually interesting because it goes right into our conversation. Another point on that discussion yesterday, one of the brigadier generals that was presenting, in the background you could hear his kids talking, right? His little one was having a conversation, someone was doing the dishes. I mean, we've brought human into the workplace. You've got your dog, you've got your Five Guys, and this is okay. I think it's actually better than okay.
I completely agree. I can't tell you. I mean, I've had so many snafus because I'm presenting at a conference like 1, 2, 3 times a week, nothing for a week, and then back again. I can't tell you how many times the UPS guy showed up. I forgot to shut off my driveway sensors. The announcement when it goes on in my house when someone enters the driveway or different regions of my property, it says someone's entered the driveway, and the dogs just go ape shit, and I go, hold on a second. And a lot of times if there's 200 plus people, I have a co-presenter, so I'll just channel them, mute. But I've actually had 2 dogs' heads with their ears sticking up right here, just holding them, petting them. It's like, it's like Mr. Smithers or something like that, or Dr. Evil. But at the same time, like, people have empathy. They get it. Like, they either have kids or dogs, or there's a delivery driver that comes. I mean, we've got the garbage man, the FedEx, the Amazon deliveries, USPS. It's just like every day there's some snafu in some way. Like, I was presenting on Monday at a chief learning officers conference, and it was like 10 minutes before production time. We'd already done all our tech checks. I rebooted my computer. I rebooted my router, Wi-Fi, everything. I log in. My video is like, the audio is like robotic. And like, okay, guys, hop on the chat, like, give me a dial-in number, get me this, get me that, and I email you my slides. I'll use the following keywords, or just dramatic pause. And it's just like, you got to improvise. If you can't improvise, you just die. I told you about my t-shirt, right?
No.
So a designer that worked for me a number of years ago designed a t-shirt, won some t-shirt contest, and now it's bootlegged everywhere. It's an alma mater t-shirt that says MacGyver School of Engineering, improvise or die, and then it has Swiss Army knife, duct tape, and paper clip on it. And it is awesome. And it's true, because we all have to be improv masters.
We do. We have to be really resilient. And I like you, have 15 backup plans, which is how I get through these things. And what's great is that everyone else has learned those backup plans as well, right? And learned to adjust. And I think for me, one of the things that stuck out the most through my campaign, I had to deal with the FEC, the Federal Election Committee. And we had to go through a bunch of financial whatnot to get it all, to get everything exactly right. And so I ended up having to be on the phone with one of their tech people every single day for like a month. And of course, she was working from home, which she has never done. And she had a 1-year-old screaming in the phone. And I thought, people don't realize that from a government perspective, I mean, this is entirely shocking, right? The expectations of being present in the office, whether it is necessary or not, is something that we absolutely expect of our federal workers. And we were fine. We got through things fine. She kept apologizing because I understood from her perspective, this isn't just different. This is shocking to be at home and having to maneuver all of that. But I think it's great. I think you're right. We're learning resilience. We're learning new ways to interact. And one of the comments that was made yesterday at the ADLI Fest was, we're not yet at the new normal. We are still using our old belief systems and structures and trying to apply them online, which is identical to what we're doing for much of the virtual learning that's happening. We're just taking teachers and having them record themselves or get on and talk to students. We haven't really taken advantage of what can be done with virtual learning or what can be done in virtual workspaces. And so I pose that question to you. If we could design the new normal for the workspace, what would that look like? Because it wouldn't be exactly this. Elements, but it wouldn't be exactly this.
Yeah, so I'm very present with this because I've been talking to a lot of people, and what everyone's trying to do is approximate what the real world is, and they keep coming up to things that you hit a critical point that you just can't move past. But there's other things that people spend a lot of energy pushing towards the boundaries and the threshold. And for me, it's super interesting because I think there's a reframe that's necessary, which is not how do we approximate the real world, but how do we think about an enhanced digital world kind of around the corner, over the top, and say what's possible. I'm part of this 50-person sort of innovator and designer conference, and our conversation at weekly planning has moved from let's not take all of the things from the real world. Let's take the most impactful ones and try to approximate those, and then let's imagine new spaces, new types of engagement, new opportunities that digital can bring to life that could never happen in the real world.
Yeah. So one of the concepts I like to push is no longer am I aiming for a work-life balance. I'm aiming for a work-life integration. And really thinking about what are those elements throughout my day, throughout my life that allow me to work and the positive flow, right? For myself or for my kids or for my family, taking advantage of this open space in time, right? And there's so much that we can do. So if you were to name 3, what would concretely 3 things look like that you would love to see that we capture and move toward as we think about the next, 6 to 18 months?
Well, I mean, I think this applies in a bunch of domains. So, when you're putting a new group of people together to do something, they have to understand each other. You have to get alignment. You have to motivate them, and you've got to thread them. We have tons of technology for collaboration, for threading people. We have this, sort of face-to-face for communication. But how do you create sort of an open space with playfulness, right? I love design thinking, and I love body storming and game storm. I like all the storming techniques. And the question is not how do you simulate those in a digital environment, but how do you play games in a digital environment that you could just never play in a regular environment? And so, I mean, a really simple example is I do chat jams with people all the time if we're doing something creative. We'll have our meeting, but I'll ask some side questions and use just the chat because it's just there and it's easy and it's accessible as a collection feature to collect a bunch of ideas and then work those in later as we're moving along. But there's a lot more that we can do. I mean, there's a lot of emerging tech that we can apply to solve this problem. So I'm present with this because I was talking to my brother today, and he has a 4-year-old, and she's going to preschool. He doesn't want her to go to preschool because she's not going to wear a mask. He doesn't want her to go to preschool for a number of reasons, but he wants her to go to preschool because she knows how to spell and do math and all kinds of things, and she needs that social interaction. So I think play is that same problem in all of these spaces. We need to be able to be connected and to be human, but most of all, lower the barrier enough and be human enough where we can be playful with each other.
So how do we do that?
Well, magic and science, I think it's the intersection of those things together. I mean, I've seen a lot of prototypes. I don't know if you follow Elliot Mazie and his work with this learning consortium.
Right.
I attend some of his events and they're fantastic. He starts it off with literally someone playing music.
Yeah.
Now, when we're doing real world things, we have a lot of shared context. The air smells the same, it's the same temperature. There are all these things that you kind of take for granted that used to happen in the real world. How do you just get enough of those things where people say, we're together, we're apart, but we're actually together in this space? Music is certainly one of them. Do a bunch of improv types of exercises, bring a joke, bring a story, jamming on, random ideas along the way. So it's not easy, but it's a grand design challenge. I mean, I think you, like you, design thinking is critical. And so asking how might we questions is awesome. So how might we be playful, but how might we create something together? And I think it's not the ideas themselves, but it's the questions that we ask and the prototypes that we do, because I don't think anyone has the answer. I talk to a lot of learning leaders and they say, we used to fly everyone here. We used to interview for 2 days. We used to do this. What do we do now? I said, well, you could try that digitally, but it's not the same. So playfulness and games,
I like your shared experience, though. I think that's really key. And I hadn't thought of it exactly the way that you're saying it, but something comes to mind. My daughter turns 9. And I was determined to have a birthday party for her because previous to this, our older daughter was a lacrosse player. So we were traveling around the country every single birthday for her. So she kept missing. So this year was our first chance. And of course, we were all shut down. So I ordered online all of these art projects for the kids that she would have invited, and everyone got a goodie bag sent to their house. So all the children opened up a goodie bag that looked identical, and they got to dress up. So they were all wearing matching little costumes, and then they were all painting together and showing off their things. And to me, that was at least my attempt at creating some level of shared experience for them, so that they were all in this kind of third space, if you will, right? It's not just about where am I and where are you, but it's where is that place that we can connect. And to the extent that we can create some of that synergy, then perhaps we feel like that's our place over there, right? It's almost like it's not the workplace, but it's this external place. I like that concept. I'm going to be thinking more about that because I hadn't thought of it from that perspective. I stumbled into it. trying to make that work.
Yeah, so I mean, I would chalk that up to what I would call the out of app experience. Right. So I'm having experience, and now I'm in the app here. But what can I pull out of here or push into here? That's this shared space. If you benchmark communities like the performance space, so symphonies, I love symphony. It's beautiful. You can't go watch a symphony because they're not getting together to perform, but they'll get together in small groups and perform live. But the fundraising scene around that is really messed up right now. But our local symphony is really interesting here. They do some innovative stuff. So now they have a wine series because they figure everybody likes symphony, you like wine. So you sign up, they ship you or hand deliver a bottle of wine to your house. Then everybody gets together. There's an active chat jam that's going on. People are talking about foods that they're pairing, and a wine expert is talking about that wine and other wines too, and people are sharing around that. If you benchmark the magic community, there's a face-to-face performance space that is dominated by non-digital performance. There's a ton of innovation going on there. People are developing like at-home magic kits and then teaching classes. They're doing interactive shows. They're shipping you a box of things that you have to do and then to participate in a virtual show. So these are all examples in that how might we? These are ideas, but you know, innovation comes from associating ideas from one domain to another. So the question is, what's worth doing? I can tell you one thing that's not. Have you seen a flash mob before, right?
Yes.
So I've had flash mob disco, silent disco dance parties where invite a bunch of people, everyone get on Zoom at home, turn your volume, mute your microphone, crank your music at home, and everyone just dance. And you have this beautiful gallery of people having fun at home. I haven't figured out a way to work that into a workshop yet.
Oh my, well, I love the idea of fun, and that's going to be a tough nut to crack when it comes to the federal government, but we can certainly try. So
Yes.
fun shared experience. What's one more?
I'll brain search a little bit here, but I just think so. The two different problem spaces. One is staying connected with others that you know already, and the second is developing new relationships. And so if you look at like, hey, I just met you at a conference. What does that interpersonal exchange look like?
Right.
Versus I met you in a social gathering with other people that we trust, and we're having a brokered sort of trusted conversation. So forgetting about we all know each other already, because what's missing, the big gap in the space from a knowledge flows in domains and associations and other places is new people meeting each other and being able to aggregate enough context to have meaningful conversations. And so having that feeling of a broker trusted intro is more important than anything else. So how do you get that? Because if I just reached out to you just randomly, you didn't know anything about me, I didn't know anything about you, and I said, oh, we should talk, that's kind of one end of that continuum. If you move down that continuum, I did a lot of research on you, you did a lot of research on me, and we know enough to come to the table. I read your dissertation, I know the keywords, I know your memosphere, right? I know what JJ thinks and understands. I read her book, I have attachment points that I can link onto. But in the middle there is that honest broker person that says, Mike, I know what you're thinking about. I know what you want to try to do. I know what JJ is thinking about, what she wants to try to do. So I think there's a unmet need to have those trusted broker conversations, even though we don't have trusted brokers in between us. And I think that requires us to do just a little bit more. And
Yeah.
if you combine play and playfulness, then we can come to the table in a 20-minute conversation and actually kind of get to something meaningful. And so I think this collective intelligence and aggregation of that intelligence in new spaces is something that if we aren't deliberate about it and purposeful, that we're going to see a lot of innovation slow down.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. So there's kind of these new expectations and acceptable behaviors, for example. So my daughter with the Army was doing an online immersive language training experience. And she kept asking me, is it okay for me just to reach out to some of the people in the class? Had she been in the class, it would have been completely socially appropriate to have gotten to know everybody. But because they're not actually physically present, she has to reach out and then connect to them and say, hey, we have something in common. We should at least chat. It's awkward because it hasn't been the norm to date. And so I think partly, like you said, we have to take responsibility to reach out and do those connections, but we're also busy. That's why it works so well in some of those conferences and meeting spaces. But as you were talking, I couldn't help but think, I'm a little old for this, but I think of internet dating. And I'm like, and I know somewhat LinkedIn works on that same premise, but it's not entirely. It makes accessible, but it doesn't necessarily connect us in that kind of matchmaking way. Like you said, that honest broker. So I almost kind of wonder, will we end up in a space where we're filling out bios and someone's saying, I encourage you to connect because we think there may be a synergy in working together. it's an interesting what's the word I'm looking for? I'm hesitant. I'm trying to figure out why I'm hesitant. Probably just because it isn't a norm yet, right? Being able to find those companies to work with, or the people to work with, or who you should have, who would be the optimal person to give your time to online. We do it by happenstance. So going to be an interesting new space. Take some responsibility. We'll all have to do that. We'll have to get shared spaces and think outside the box, it sounds like.
Well, I think looking backwards is helpful too. One of the great mentors in my life is Dr. Jerry Zahorchak. He was the Secretary of Education in Pennsylvania. And from the first time I met him, a week or two would pass by, and then he would say, "Hey, Mike, I think you should meet John." And he'd put a little seed and say, you guys figure it out. But I think there's always been an unmet need that people in one network need to associate with another to fold and create some, innovation, disruption, or breakthroughs. And I think that people have done this. I just think that we need to be more aware of it and more deliberate. There's a group that I'm part of called ABCD. It's Connections University. It's a Facebook group. And ABCD is the philosophy. It says, always be connecting dots. And so every week, I try to introduce 3 people that I know to 3 other people that I know for some kind of value. I'm always trying to be aware and present with the fact that someone needs to know someone else and to be able to do that. And I think if we just started to define and amplify those kinds of behaviors, the rest of the stuff's here. If we can connect, we can play, and we can have feelings of trust in these brokered conversations. That's great, but I just think we need to be good stewards of our networks.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm your host, Dr. JJ Walcott. This has been The Nerdy Truth.